How many husbands have heard their wives say, "If you love me, you'll let me do this"? That single line cut through me like a knife. Right in the middle of what should have been a romantic evening celebrating our 6th anniversary in Seattle. It was then that my world began to unravel, right there in the soft candlelight of the cedar grill. My beautiful wife, Lily, looked at me with a calmness that felt misplaced, as if she were about to ask for something trivial. Instead, she dropped a bombshell. She wanted to start seeing other men, to explore relationships beyond our marriage. The way she said it, with an unnerving gentleness, made it seem like a simple request, as if this were something we could just discuss over a glass of wine. I sat there, feeling as if the ground had shifted beneath me. I'd planned the whole evening, wanting it to be special for us. The Cedar Grill was one of our favorite places, intimate, elegant, the kind of place where you could linger over a good bottle of wine. I'd even surprised her with a delicate diamond bracelet, something she'd admired for months, but tonight, she hardly reacted. I remember noticing how tense she seemed, her gaze darting around the room instead of focusing on me. Normally, she would have met my eyes, smiling as we talked about everything and nothing, but tonight she couldn't sit still. Her eyes kept drifting to the flickering candle, the untouched breadbasket, the menu she'd long since closed. Finally, after we'd finished the main course and were lingering over a second glass of wine, she leaned in, her expression serious. "Mike, there's something I need to talk to you about," she began, her voice just a whisper. "It's been on my mind for a while, and I can't keep it to myself any longer." I set my glass down, suddenly alert. "What is it?" I asked, already sensing the heaviness in her tone. Part of me thought, maybe even hoped, that she was finally ready to talk about starting a family. We discussed it over the years, but always put it off, waiting until our careers and finances felt secure. And here we were, stable, comfortable, everything we'd wanted. So, I was more than ready for this next step. She looked away, pausing, and I could see she was choosing her words carefully. "I want to do something I don't think you'll agree with right now. But it's important to me," Lily said slowly, her fingers toying with the stem of her wine glass. "I need to explore life beyond our marriage, to find some freedom to figure out who I really am. I think it would make me a better wife to you in the end." Her words hit me like a punch. The hurt, confusion, and anger swirled in my chest, emotions barely held in check. "Well, what exactly are you talking about?" I managed, struggling to keep my voice steady as I pressed my palms flat against the table. I looked into her eyes, trying to find some hint that she wasn't serious, that this was some terrible misunderstanding. She bit her lip, still avoiding my gaze. "I need to explore other relationships, Mike," she said softly. "I want you to understand so there won't be any misunderstandings or hard feelings when it happens." The blood rushed to my head, and I felt my heart pounding. "Other relationships?" I echoed, my voice trembling. "What exactly do you mean by that, Lily?" She took a deep breath. "I'm not sure yet, but I think I might want to see other men." It felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. I could hardly breathe. "Are you serious?" I whispered, leaning closer. "You're talking about having an affair? And you're asking for my permission to go out and sleep with other men?" "Mike, please," she murmured, glancing around as if worried someone might overhear. I didn't want to bring this up here, but I didn't want to make a scene either. I realized then how calculated this all was. She'd chosen this setting, this public place, where she knew I'd feel compelled to keep my emotions in check. It made me feel trapped. My stomach twisted, the wonderful dinner I'd looked forward to now forgotten, replaced by a sick knot of nausea. "Why?" I managed, voice low and strained. "Why do you want to see other men, Lily?" She took another long pause, her fingers now tracing the rim of her glass. "I need to find out who I am," she murmured, almost to herself, "to understand what I'm missing. This isn't about leaving you, Mike. I love you, and I'm not planning to go anywhere. But I feel like there's something I need to experience, something that will make me a better partner to you." I stared at her, speechless, watching the flickering candlelight reflect off the diamond bracelet on her wrist. "You want my support to go out and sleep with other men?" I asked, each word weighed down by disbelief. "Can you even hear yourself right now?" "It's not like that," she insisted, her tone pleading. I do love you, and I want us to grow old together. I want to start a family with you when the time is right. But right now, I need this. I need to explore this part of me, and I need you to be there for me in this. I couldn't speak. I couldn't find any words to respond. She just told me, over our anniversary dinner, that she wanted to be with other men and expected me to be on board with it, expected me to understand. As she looked at me, waiting for some kind of answer, the world around us seemed to blur, the quiet murmur of the restaurant fading into the background. I was lost, adrift, unable to grasp what she was asking of me, unable to believe that this was even happening. After a long pause, I stood up slowly, carefully placing my napkin on the table, as if I were afraid to disturb the fragile calm in the room. Without another word, I grabbed my wine glass, tipped it back, and finished the last sip, feeling the warmth of it slide down as I steadied myself. I turned and walked away from the table, heading straight for the door. Mike, where are you going? Lily's voice followed me, a sharp note of urgency in it, but I didn't turn around. I don't know, I muttered, mostly to myself. But you might need to find your own way home. Outside, the Seattle night was cool, a fine mist of drizzle beginning to fall, clinging to my clothes and chilling my skin. I barely noticed it. My mind was a storm of conflicting emotions. Anger, disbelief, pain. I found my car, climbed inside, and started the engine without a second thought. I didn't care where I was going. I just needed to get away, to clear my head, or at least try to. The ache in my chest had spread, becoming a dull throb that seemed to pulse in my temples and tighten around my heart. I drove for hours, mindlessly, the city lights eventually fading into quiet streets. I didn't keep track of time or direction. When I finally stopped, dawn was breaking, casting a dim light over an unfamiliar neighborhood. I leaned back in my seat, exhausted, and let my eyes close, hoping sleep would dull the pain. Somehow, despite everything raging in my mind, I drifted off. I woke up to the sun streaming in through the windshield, a harsh reminder that reality hadn't changed overnight. My neck was stiff, and my whole body ached from sleeping in the car. I stretched, feeling the stiffness in my shoulders, and for a brief moment, I wished that everything from the previous night had been a nightmare. But reality settled in, with a cold clarity as the memories resurfaced. I needed to think, to figure out what to do next, how to approach this impossible situation. First, though, I needed coffee. I spotted a small diner nearby, the kind with neon signs and faded booths, and parked. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of fresh coffee and frying bacon. And for a moment, the familiarity was comforting. I ordered breakfast, my mind racing as I tried to make sense of it all. Could I really stay in a marriage where my wife wanted to be with other men? Could I stand by and accept this new arrangement? Even if she was going through some kind of personal crisis, I couldn't understand how she thought I'd go along with it. It felt like a betrayal of everything we built together. As I sipped my coffee, I reached for my phone, realizing it had been turned off since the night before. When I powered it on, the screen lit up with missed calls and texts from Lily. Her messages ranged from worried to frantic. Where are you? Please let me know you're okay. We need to talk. But right then, I wasn't sure I was ready to go home. Not yet. Over the next hour, I tried to gather my thoughts, a rough plan taking shape in my mind. If this was her decision, then I had a choice too. I wouldn't let this situation control me. I had to take back some sense of stability, even if that meant setting boundaries she didn't expect. Finally, I felt a sense of resolve. I paid for my meal and walked back to my car, bracing myself as I headed home. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Lily waiting by the door, her expression a mixture of anxiety and relief. She hurried over as I got out, her arms reaching toward me, as if to pull me into an embrace. Mike, where have you been? I've been so worried. I thought something happened to you, she said, her voice trembling. I needed time to think, I replied, keeping my tone cold and distant. I had to clear my head. I could see the flicker of pain in her eyes, but I didn't soften. I'm going to take a shower, I said, stepping back before she could reach me. And then we're going to talk. You and I are going to sit down, and we're going to discuss this exploration idea of yours. Without waiting for a response, I walked past her and headed up the stairs to our bedroom. My suit from last night felt wrinkled and constricting, a painful reminder of the evening I'd hoped would be memorable for different reasons. I shed it and stepped into the shower, letting the hot water stream over me, trying to wash away the tension that had built up overnight. I knew this was going to be one of the hardest conversations of my life, but it was necessary. And this time, I wouldn't be blindsided. I needed to get a handle on where Lily's head was, and even more importantly, I needed her to understand exactly where I stood. After getting dressed, I went downstairs to find Lily sitting at the kitchen island, her fingers nervously tapping against her phone. She looked up when I walked in, her eyes searching mine, but I didn't give her the reassurance she was probably hoping for. I made myself a strong cup of coffee, grabbed a notepad and a pen, and took a seat across from her, setting the cup down with a quiet clink. "All right, Lily," I began, my tone calm but firm. "Why don't you explain again why you think having relationships outside of our marriage is a good idea?" I struggled to keep my voice steady, hoping to understand her reasoning, though it was the last thing I wanted to hear. She took a shaky breath, her eyes pleading. "Mike, I feel like I need validation as a woman. Right now, I don't feel like my needs are being met, and I need to figure out what those needs actually are." I shook my head, not sure if I'd even heard her correctly. "So, let me get this straight," I said, frustration creeping into my voice. "You don't even know what your needs are, but you're willing to risk everything we have just to find out? And you expect me to sit back and wait?" "No, Mike, I'm not leaving you," she said, her voice almost desperate. "I'll still be here, in our home with you. I just need the freedom to explore this part of myself, to understand who I am without losing what we have." I scoffed, feeling my patience wane. "And when exactly are you planning to start this exploration? Tonight? Tomorrow? Next week?" She looked away, her hands fidgeting. "I don't know. Maybe any time, I guess. But I wanted to talk to you first to make sure you understand." "Understand?" I repeated, my voice tight. "No, Lily, I don't understand this at all." I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. "When we got married, we promised to be partners and lovers for life. Now you're telling me you want to find other lovers? How am I supposed to take that? It sounds to me like you're trying to end our marriage without having to say it outright." "It's not that, Mike," she protested, her voice softening. I need to feel something that's been missing. Lately, we've been so focused on work and our goals that it's like we've lost the fun we used to have. I don't feel appreciated, not the way I did when we first got married." "Appreciated?" I asked, my frustration boiling over. "Lily, everything I've done has been for us, for our future. I've worked hard to build a life together, to make things comfortable. And now you're telling me that's not enough? That you need more?" I clenched my fists, trying to keep a lid on my anger. "Are you planning on sleeping with these other men?" I asked, forcing myself to address the core of the issue. Lily hesitated, her gaze falling to her hands. "I don't know, Mike," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe, if it feels right with the right person." I stared at her, feeling a white-hot anger rise within me. "So you're planning on cheating on me, and you actually expect me to be okay with it?" "It's not cheating if you know about it, Mike," she said softly, as if that simple explanation would make it hurt any less. I took a deep breath, struggling to keep my voice from trembling. "Let me make sure I've got this right, Lily. You want to go out, meet other men, date them, maybe even sleep with them, all while staying here with me, living as if nothing has changed." "It's not that simple, Mike," she said, still avoiding my eyes. "I just need to explore who I am, to understand what I'm missing. But I love you, and I don't want us to end. I want us to stay together." "To me, it seems pretty straightforward," I replied, my voice cold. "You want to have your cake and eat it too. You want to keep me here as your husband while you go off and experiment." I took a long breath, the bitterness tightening in my chest. "Have you thought at all about what this will do to us? What it will do to me?" She finally looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I know this is hard, Mike. I'm sorry, but I really believe this is something I need to do. And after a few months, I'll come back to you completely, and I'll be stronger for it." I looked at her, struggling to comprehend the audacity of what she was saying. "So let me get this straight. You genuinely believe that after sleeping with other men, you can just come back and everything will go back to normal? That I'll just accept it like nothing happened?" She bit her lip, her voice cracking as she spoke. Mike, if you love me, you'll let me do this. I felt something inside me snap, a part of me that had always trusted her, that had seen our future together. If you loved me, Lily, you wouldn't even think of doing this. I shot back, each word laced with pain. For a moment, her face softened, but her expression quickly shifted back to one of resolve, a mix of sadness and determination. I've made up my mind, Mike. This is what I'm going to do. You can't talk me out of it. And there it was, laid bare, the ultimatum that would change everything. She was ready to risk our marriage, our future, for this vague concept of self-discovery. And in that moment, I realized there was nothing I could say that would make her change her mind. It was painfully clear that Lily had already made her decision, and there was no turning back. All right, Lily, I said, my voice steady though I felt anything but. If you're set on doing this, then I have some conditions. I held her gaze, bracing myself for her reaction. You're going to move out while you go through with this. A flash of shock crossed her face, as if the thought of boundaries hadn't even occurred to her. Move out? But where am I supposed to go? She stammered. You can stay with Jessica if she's so supportive of this idea, I replied coolly. Or you can find a short-term rental. But you'll be covering all your expenses. I'm not going to fund your exploration, Lily. She blinked, absorbing the reality of my words. I don't want to move out, Mike. This is our home. Not while you're doing this. It isn't, I said firmly, unwilling to compromise. You want an open marriage? Fine. But you're going to live with the consequences of that choice. I'll stay here, and you can handle your self-discovery somewhere else. Her silence stretched between us, heavy and loaded with unsaid words, until she finally nodded, a reluctant acceptance in her eyes. I guess I don't have a choice, do I? No, I replied, my voice carrying a mix of relief and sadness. You don't. I took a long breath. Let me know where you'll be staying by the end of the week. And for now, move your things into the spare bedroom. I can't share a bed with you while you're planning this. Lily didn't argue. She just nodded, a few silent tears slipping down her cheeks as she left the kitchen. Watching her walk away, I felt a hollow ache settle in my chest, the weight of the situation sinking in. The woman I had devoted myself to, the one I'd imagined a lifetime with, was choosing to walk a path that didn't include me. It felt like a long, painful goodbye, even though she was still physically here. The days that followed were tense and filled with a strained silence between us. Lily moved her clothes and belongings into the spare bedroom without a word, and we did our best to avoid each other, each of us retreating into separate corners of our lives. I threw myself into work and spent more time at the gym, hoping the physical strain would burn off some of the frustration and heartache building inside me. The house that had once felt like a refuge now felt hollow, stripped of warmth and comfort. On Thursday evening, Lily approached me in the living room while I was watching TV. Mike, she began, her voice tentative. I talked to Jessica, and she said I could stay with her for a while. I'll move in this weekend. Good, I replied, keeping my eyes on the screen. That's probably for the best. She lingered a moment, as if she wanted to say more, but after a hesitant pause, she just nodded and walked away. Her decision to leave felt like the first real step in whatever journey she was planning, but it didn't make it any easier to accept. Part of me clung to the hope that she'd reconsider, that she'd realize how much she was putting at risk and change her mind. But that hope felt fainter with every passing day. Saturday arrived, and I watched from the doorway as Lily packed her belongings into boxes and loaded them into her car. I felt a strange mix of anger, sadness, and helplessness as she prepared to leave, not just physically, but emotionally too. This was really happening. She was choosing this path, one that didn't include us. Before getting into her car, she turned to me one last time, her face full of uncertainty. Mike, I don't want to do this if it's going to destroy us. Are you sure we can't work something out? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady as I looked at her. Lily, if you truly loved me and wanted this marriage to work, you wouldn't be doing this. I've asked you to reconsider, but you've made up your mind. So go ahead. But don't expect me to be here waiting for you when you're done exploring. She didn't respond. Her eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing more. She simply looked at me, as if trying to memorize my face, then got into her car and drove away. I stood in the driveway, watching her taillights disappear down the street, feeling a depth of loneliness I hadn't known was possible. That night, after hours of sitting in silence, I changed the locks on the house and reset the garage code, a symbolic gesture as much as a practical one. It was my way of drawing a line between the life we'd once shared and the uncertain reality I was now facing. The first night alone was brutal. The house felt cavernous and empty, the silence heavy. I tried to distract myself, scrubbing counters, rearranging cabinets, anything to keep from sinking into the grief that clung to every corner of the place. But no matter what I did, I couldn't escape the memories. Eventually, I gave up and went to bed, though sleep felt impossible. Every sound, every shadow reminded me of her, of us. The next morning, I woke up before dawn, restless and worn out. I decided to go for a run, something I hadn't done in a long time. I needed to clear my head, to find something to channel the ache that had settled inside me. As I jogged through the damp streets of Seattle, I focused on the rhythm of my breath, the steady beat of my feet hitting the pavement, anything to keep my thoughts at bay. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling of loss. In the days that followed, I tried to drown myself in work, in the gym, in anything that kept me from coming home to an empty house. I avoided places Lily and I used to visit together, the restaurants and cafes that held too many memories. I filled my time with anything I could find, yet the loneliness only grew sharper. One evening, after another day spent trying to avoid my thoughts, I made a decision. I picked up the phone and called my lawyer. I hadn't told anyone what was happening between Lily and me, but I knew it was time to start making plans for the inevitable. When I reached out to my regular lawyer, he recommended a colleague who specialized in divorce. Reluctantly, I made an appointment for the next day, bracing myself for the reality of it all. The divorce attorney was professional and straightforward. I explained the situation, Lily's decision to seek relationships outside our marriage, my boundaries, and my need to protect myself if things spiraled further. She listened closely, then looked at me with calm assurance. "Mike," she said, her tone steady, "I know this is difficult, but you need to take steps to secure your interests. We'll start by documenting everything. I'll draft the necessary papers, but we won't file them until you're ready to proceed." I nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness. This wasn't where I'd ever thought I'd be, but I couldn't just sit back. I had to be prepared. The next few weeks passed in an uneasy silence between Lily and me. She'd moved in with Jessica, and I assumed she was already enjoying the new freedom she'd wanted so badly. I threw myself into work, avoiding thoughts of what she might be doing. The details were too painful to consider. One Saturday, about a month after she'd left, I realized I needed to reconnect with the world outside my own thoughts. I'd heard about a cycling group that met on weekends, so I decided to join. We met at a park on the edge of the city, then took a long ride through Seattle's surrounding hills. The physical challenge helped ground me, forcing me to focus on each pedal stroke instead of the turmoil I'd been carrying. By the time we finished, I felt a little lighter, a bit more like myself. After the ride, a few of the cyclists invited me to grab a beer at a bar nearby, Blue Ridge Tavern. I agreed, and as we sat around talking, I realized how much I'd missed this, being with people who knew nothing about my situation, people who just enjoyed the moment. It was a small but welcome step toward feeling normal again. One of the women in the group, a social worker named Megan, caught my attention. She was tall, with wavy blonde hair, warm brown eyes, and a laid-back smile. We talked about the ride, our work, and eventually life in general. I didn't mention Lily. It still felt too fresh to discuss. But there was something genuine about Megan that made it easy to relax. As the night wore on, I found myself asking if she'd like to go kayaking the next weekend. I half expected her to turn me down, but to my surprise, she smiled. "I'd love to," she said. "I've never been, but it sounds like fun." We exchanged numbers, and as I left the bar, I felt a glimmer of hope. It wasn't about filling the gap Lily had left. It was about maybe, just maybe, finding my way forward again. The following weekend, I met Megan at the lake. The weather was ideal, clear skies, and a gentle breeze across the water, perfect for a day on the lake. Megan was eager, asking questions about the gear and how to paddle, and I enjoyed showing her the ropes. As we glided over the water, we talked about everything from travel to our favorite places in Seattle. Megan's laughter was infectious, and for the first time in months, I felt genuinely relaxed. She made everything feel simpler, lighter. After kayaking, we headed to a nearby restaurant called the Dockside Grill, a casual spot overlooking the water. We grabbed a table outside, and as we ate, the conversation flowed naturally. Megan shared stories from her work, and I found myself opening up more than I'd expected. I still didn't mention Lily, but with Megan, I felt at ease. It was nice to be in the moment with someone, to just enjoy each other's company without the weight of my past hanging over me. As the sun began to set, we took a walk along the waterfront, stopping at an ice cream stand where Megan insisted on treating me, laughing as she said it was her way of saying thanks for the kayaking lesson. We wandered along the boardwalk, cones in hand, and I realized just how much I enjoyed being around her. This wasn't about filling the emptiness Lily had left. It was about feeling connected to someone who made me feel good simply by being there. When we reached the end of the boardwalk, I walked Megan back to her car. I hesitated, unsure of how to end the evening, but she made the decision for me. She leaned in, giving me a soft kiss on the lips, brief but full of possibility. I found myself standing there, a little stunned but smiling. "I had a great time today, Mike," Megan said, her brown eyes bright. "Let's do this again soon." "I'd like that," I replied, still a little dazed as Megan smiled, climbed into her car, and waved as she drove off. I stood there for a few minutes, watching her taillights disappear, an unfamiliar warmth settling in my chest. On the drive home, I replayed the day in my mind, feeling a surge of hope that had been missing for so long. In the weeks that followed, Megan and I spent more and more time together. We went kayaking again, played a friendly but competitive round of golf, and even hiked through the mountains. Each time, I found myself looking forward to the next, feeling more connected with her than I'd felt in years. One Saturday evening, after a round of golf filled with laughter and teasing, Megan and I decided to have dinner at my place. We set up the grill on the patio, sharing a bottle of wine as the Seattle skyline glowed in the distance. As we ate, she eyed me with a playful grin. "You're a pretty decent golfer, Mike," she teased, nudging my arm. "But don't think for a second that I'm going easy on you next time." "Pretty decent?" I scoffed, feigning offense. "I was giving you a head start. Next time, you won't stand a chance." She laughed, shaking her head. "We'll see about that." The easy banter continued as we cleared the plates. Just as I picked up my keys, Megan took them from my hand, setting them on the counter. She looked at me, her expression a mix of curiosity and boldness. "Can I get the grand tour?" she asked, her voice soft yet assured. "Of course," I replied, surprised but happy to show her around. I led her from room to room, ending in the master bedroom, where she looked around with a smile. "Nice setup," she said, glancing back at me. "Feels like you've really made this place your own." "Thanks," I replied, suddenly feeling self-conscious. Before I could say anything else, she took a step closer, a warmth in her gaze that made my heart beat faster. "I think I like it here," she said quietly, and then leaned in, her lips meeting mine in a kiss that was gentle at first, then grew deeper. I didn't pull away, and soon we were lost in the moment, the tension of the past few months fading away, replaced by a warmth and connection that felt like a fresh start. The next morning, I woke up to find Megan beside me, her arm draped comfortably across my chest. I lay there for a while, enjoying the simplicity of it, feeling an ease I hadn't felt in a long time. We spent the morning on the patio, sharing breakfast and coffee as the city came to life around us. As we finished eating, Megan looked over at me, her face turning serious. "So, Mike, what's your plan moving forward?" she asked gently. "I mean with Lily. Are you thinking about divorce?" The question hung in the air between us, inevitable but challenging. I nodded, taking a steadying breath. "Yes, Megan. I've been consulting with a lawyer. I think it's time. I'm ready to let go of what was and move forward with what feels right." She nodded, looking away for a moment, then back at me. "I'm glad to hear that, Mike. I really like being around you, she admitted, her cheeks flushing slightly. But I want to know that we're both moving forward together. I don't want to be just a distraction. I reached across the table, taking her hand. You're not a distraction, Megan. Far from it. Being with you, it's the first time I've felt at peace in a long time. I want to see where this goes to. And I promise, I'm moving forward with the divorce. I'm not going back. A gentle smile spread across her face as she squeezed my hand. Well, that's all I needed to hear, she said softly. I just wanted to be sure we're on the same page. We spent the rest of the morning together, laughing and talking like we had all the time in the world. For the first time in months, I felt the weight lift. I was finally ready to let go of the past, to step into a new chapter, one that no longer held the pain and betrayal of my last. The following Monday, I made an appointment with my lawyer to move forward with the divorce. It was time to close that chapter of my life, and as I walked out of the office, I knew I was ready for whatever came next. I explained to my lawyer that Lily and I had been living separately for a while now, and I was ready to make the separation official. She agreed that the timing was right and assured me everything would be handled efficiently. Over the next few weeks, her investigator gathered the evidence to confirm what I had already suspected. Lily hadn't been seeing just one man. She'd been dating several, some of whom were married, and they often met at Jessica's apartment. Strangely, rather than feeling betrayed, I felt more resolved. Knowing the full extent of her actions only made it easier to let go. 2 weeks later, Lily was served with the divorce papers. That evening, I heard a knock on the door and found her standing there, holding the brown envelope, her face flushed with barely contained anger and frustration. "Mike, what is this?" she demanded, shaking the papers at me. "You filed for divorce? Why? I told you I'd be coming home soon. I was even planning to come back this week." I took a steadying breath, ready for this confrontation. "Lily, it's too late for that. You made your choice when you decided to pursue other relationships. I told you I didn't want you to leave, but you did it anyway. I've had no choice but to move on." She stared at me, searching my face as if hoping for some hint that I'd change my mind. "But I told you I needed time to find myself, to feel good about who I am. I didn't think you'd actually go through with this." I let out a hollow laugh, shaking my head. "So, tell me, Lily, did you find what you were looking for? Are you validated enough? Have you figured out who you are? Because from where I'm standing, all you've done is destroy what we built together." She softened, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Mike, I love you," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Maybe I took things too far, but I'm ready to come back. We can start over, rebuild, and maybe even start the family we always dreamed of." I felt a mixture of anger, sorrow, and clarity as I looked at her. "Lily, you walked out on our marriage. You chose to be with other men, thinking I'd just wait around until you got this out of your system. But I won't be here whenever you decide you're done with your self-exploration. It's over." Her gaze dropped to the divorce papers in her hand, her shoulders slumping. "So, that's it?" she asked softly. "You're really ending this?" "Yes, Lily," I replied firmly. "It's over. I've made my decision, and I'm not going back. You need to move on, too." She didn't argue or plead. She simply turned and walked back to her car, clutching the papers as if they were the only thing holding her together. I watched her drive away, feeling the weight of finality settle over me. It was a painful but necessary goodbye. The following month passed quietly. Lily and I avoided the court by settling the divorce amicably. She received half of our assets, and the house was sold. I used my share to buy a new place, a fresh start in a different part of Seattle, away from the memories. Word about Lily's lifestyle spread among her colleagues at the charter school where she worked. Through mutual friends, I heard the school had asked her to keep a lower profile, as some parents were uncomfortable with the rumors surrounding her personal life. Her actions were catching up with her, affecting both her reputation and her career. A few months later, I heard through the grapevine that Lily had been diagnosed with an STD. It wasn't life-threatening, but it required ongoing treatment and a period of abstinence. And, as if that wasn't enough, she was also pregnant. The father was reportedly one of the married men she'd been seeing, a fellow teacher. The mess of it all gave me a grim sense of closure, as if the universe itself had set the scales right. In contrast, my life had taken a turn for the better. Megan and I had grown closer, moving in together and building something solid. A year after Lily left, Megan and I got engaged, and we started planning a wedding for the summer. Then, just as we thought our future couldn't get brighter, Megan came to me with joyful tears in her eyes. We were expecting our first child. If all went well, our baby would arrive just in time to make the holiday season even more magical. Thank you for joining us for this touching journey of love, betrayal, and redemption. We hope it resonated with you, even brought a little inspiration. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. We'd love to hear your thoughts and reactions in the comments. Feel free to share your own experiences or let us know what kinds of stories you'd like to see next. Thanks again for your support. Until then, take care and stay tuned for more great content. Bye-bye.